Okay, today's video we're talking about maximize conversions and the maximize conversion value bid strategy settings in Google Ads. How to best milk each one of these bid strategy settings for all that they're worth, or as much as you can get out of them if you're considering using them right now or have been using them and are just skeptical potentially with it or just looking for a bit more advice. I will be giving you all the need to know information about these two bid strategy settings so you can understand better how they should behave, what to expect from them long term, what kind of results you can get out of them, and of course how you can get the most out of them given their capability of what they can do in general. I'm going to go over what I normally do as far as a bid strategy setting, and I'll also throw that in there. Normally, I'll tell you right up front, I don't use maximize conversions and maximize conversion value generally that much. And if I do, it's way later on in the process of running a PPC account that I've built up from scratch. And so that's a quick prelude as to what will be coming in this particular video. And so I'll give you all the, the pros, the cons, the pitfalls, all of that in this video so you know how to use it. And the main thing that you need to know about using it in general so that you don't fall for, one of those pitfalls and have half decent results out of what you're doing in general. So anyway, getting started. The main thing to know going in with these two different bid strategy settings is that these bid strategy settings are not as so set and forget as people actually think that are going to use these. So granted, Google and other people aren't really necessarily trying to hide that these are things that normally you're supposed to use later on in the process. I just will clear up right up front that yes, you're not supposed to use it right away. But not only that, but people want to use these settings to just try to make the process easier for themselves. And to a degree can, yes. More so what it's about though is getting a little bit better results. It can save you a little bit of time, but you still have to actively manage your campaigns if you are until way later on down the road where your campaign's been running for years already, it's super stable. You can kind of get away with that. But particularly right away, it is not a shortcut or a way out of managing your campaigns. If you try to do that, you turn your campaign, you can come back a month later, if you've wasted $3,000, you're out of money or you're pissed and you're just done with it. And so it's not a way like most people might think or do think, I just need an 8-to-1 return. I'll just tell Google I want an 8-to-1 return and Google will give me the 8-to-1 return and I'm good here. This is awesome. Until they set that up and they find out a month later they got a 1-out-of-1 return. They maybe got $1 back for every dollar they spent, which isn't good enough considering all their costs and expenses and everything else. And again, like I said, they're pissed. They're turned off to the idea of Google Ads at all, and which is a shame because you can always get Google Ads to work. The only question is, how much can you get it to work? If you set up the right tracking and you know what you need out of your campaigns, which you should always do before you spend any on ads, no matter how tempting it is to just try it real quick and see if it works, you're going to end up not knowing if it works or not, and you've wasted all this time and data that you could have picked up that would have showed you what didn't work, which the process of making it work is seeing what didn't work and weeding that stuff out and going through iterations of what you're doing to figure out what will work. And if you put enough iterations and time into it, you will find something that works. You may not you can only maybe make so much and still get a 8-to-1 return that you're looking for or whatnot, but you'll still make some. Everybody will make some if they just figure out of the customers Google has there available for you to get, which ones are worth it and which ones are not, and what do they want to see versus what they don't see. It's really that simple. And you have to set up ads that are better or just as good as the top 10 or 20% of the people doing the Google Ads. Why? Because Google raises the price per click up to a point where the market can bear before they would raise it more than that, people wouldn't want to advertise at all. And the system there, and it's priced so that the top 20% make good money the people in the middle make a little bit, and the most of the people at the bottom, let's say 30-40%, make none, or they're losing money doing it. Maybe not aware because they don't have tracking. Half the people don't have tracking set up. But it creates a situation, which I 100% back what they're doing, that people constantly want to improve to be the top 10-20% that are making money, so that people constantly try to give users a better experience on Google. So in general, people want to click on ads in the future. Google wants people to know that when the last time they clicked on an ad, they got a good experience. So they're more likely and willing to click on an ad in the future. And of course, the top 10 or 20% that did do it right or better than everybody else, they still got people nipping at their heels. Anybody can come in and give it a run at any given time. And if you think you can do better than the top 10 or 20%, you come in and you try to do better than them. And then if you do, now the top 10 or 20% now can't be complacent like they were as much anymore. Now they've got to beat you. And it creates a self-perpetuating system that gets people, users, a better and better experience out of ads, so that they want to click on those more so than the organic listings, and just come back to Google in general in the future. Google's building a long-term product loyalty with this system. So anyway, with all that said, it took a quick detour out of talking about these maximize conversions, maximize conversion value. But I'm going to share with you a list of things that if you're going to use these, which there are certain times you can use it and it can be productive, I'll share that with you. The main need to know things before you do it, or if you're doing it, like I said, how to actually put things into perspective a little better, or just improve what you're doing in general. Given I've got 15 years of PPC experience and seen, these are not been around for 15 years, and they've been around under a different name, before as well. But what I've seen on different accounts, what works, what hasn't, what I've tried, so on and so forth. The first thing is, so if you're going to use any of these settings, here's what you need to know. If you use any of these, use either of these bid strategy settings, maximize conversions, maximize conversion value, early on, like as is, I'm going to set up a new campaign and I'm just going to tell Google I want a conversion for $30 and go. It will be very hard to get consistent results starting out from that. Why? The main thing that people don't realize is quality of data is everything. These campaigns get good results from knowing what has worked versus what has not worked. So instead of using, conversion tracking to see what works and what doesn't work on your own so you can change things with your ads, Google looks at what worked and what didn't work from your past ad spend, or what you've been willing to spend already, to teach Google so that they can get you more of what worked and less of what didn't work. Simple. Okay? But when you start out then, realistically, as it makes sense, they have no data, they're going to do a crappy job. And it's only a computer algorithm that decides, do you show up for this keyword, or this age demographic, or this time of the day, or on this device, or is it male versus female, or have they searched for this before or not? Have they been on other websites about this or not? Because Google has data from Google Chrome and all the websites people visit, and Google Analytics, which is on millions of websites. And they buy data from other companies, and they have a profile on most of the people that use Google going back years, so they can study when you get a conversion, what were these people like? Not just did they search for your keyword or not, but what were they like before? Did they go to this website or did they not go to this website? And there might be 1,000 data points that they look at from once somebody converts to try to get somebody like that in the future for you. And ultimately people think you're bidding on keywords on Google search if you're running Google search ads. Yes, but with this, with enhanced CPC bidding as well, they're looking at all the back history from that person when they made search. If you're bidding on red shoes, they're going to look at when somebody converts, when they search for red shoes, what all those people were like. And then if somebody doesn't convert when they had searched red shoes and clicked on your ads, they'll see what those people are like. And then they'll try to only give you traffic from certain people when they search for red shoes, and other people who search for red shoes that are not going to give it to you. And so people think this, not always, but too often, I've had clients that'll come to me and they expect it to work right away, even after telling them it's not. Trying to explain this to them, it's not a light switch. You're not going to turn on the ads and either it works, oh, it doesn't work, oh, I'm done, like in a month. Because Google, the more data they get, the better they're going to run your ads. The more data you as a human gets, the better you can steer your ads. This is, where you're relying on Google solely. Normally I used manual bidding with enhanced CPC. Why? Because I can make quicker determinations of what will work and what won't work using my process of logic, versus Google's algorithm. They can compare data points, one type of person versus another, what kind of data points they have, and they don't have quite what a human can logic out in terms of what works and doesn't work. So I'll start out with manual bidding, which most people I would recommend you do. I don't recommend using these maximize conversions, maximize conversion value, bid strategy settings right away. You set up things that what makes logical sense to you that would work for your customers and get some results that way, and keep coming back every day or every few days to take a look at what you did, what worked, what didn't work with your conversion data you got. And it'll be more consistent for you starting out, and you'll be able to get to in profitability quicker, because you could, the algorithm that Google has that steers your ads with these maximize conversions and maximize conversion value is all just using mostly what is called machine learning, where it's another word for saying process of elimination. There's 100 different ways they could run your ads. They're going to try all 100. Whereas you could tell, looking at those 100 things, that 90 of them obviously are not going to work because it doesn't make logical sense. So you'll just wipe out all those options and you'll go just to the 10. Therefore, you get to the end result of making money faster. You're always trying to get to the break-even point after all your expenses as fast as possible, because once you do that, obviously you're not going to run out of money, and it's all a downhill slide after that. So if you use these automated bidding strategies, maximize conversions, maximize conversion value, where you're letting Google solely do it for you, it's going to take them longer to figure out how to get to that break-even point, and therefore it might be so long out that you may actually be out of money to invest in this thing before it figures it out, which is the big thing. And with that, they're also, I've noticed, a lot more liberal with how they run your ads. So they'll decide to run your ads at a higher cost per click to get data quickly. The keyword matching seems to be a little bit more liberal, which means what actual search phrases your ad can be triggered by, given a set amount of keywords. I won't get into that. You can search that if you want. And but which makes sense. They're trying to get you, basically, they don't want, in terms of, instead of stretching the process out, they'll hammer a bunch of variations of what they can try or what they think they need to try real quick to get your data quick. But with that process, it's going to be less efficient, like I said, starting out, because they don't have a human doing this. It's just literally strictly a process of elimination here. They do have, it's a little bit more sophisticated than that, but still a lot of it's just you have to try all the kind of different variations and see what works and what doesn't work. Respectively, if one other thing is, if you use dynamic search ads or dynamic keyword insertion inside your headlines, which Google will build the ad for you, basically. DKI would be putting the keyword in the headline, and then dynamic search ads would be, literally speaking, them trying to build the ad and figure out the page to send people to. And with that, now there's even more options for them to now test out compared to just having a static ad and static keywords. And it can be even more wild in terms of how much it spends and how aggressively it's run, and how wide all of the different things that they're testing, which could mean or translates into lots of different wild searches that your ads are showing up for, lots of different wild ads that most of them wouldn't work, but the algorithm doesn't know a good ad from a bad ad like a human does. And you might end up spending a lot of money before you get to the break-even point. That's the main thing. If you start out with these automated bidding strategies to potentially save time, you're on the flip side, you're going to lose money short term to save the time and actually having to do some of the work, looking at running an ad, looking at the search terms report, seeing what people were typing in that actually clicked on your ad, making a determination. One keyword shouldn't actually have to run for 1,000 clicks to decide if you need it or not. You're just going to pause it right away, so on and so forth. So basically, in other words, it's got to be watched to not run out of money before you get to that break-even point. If you do these automated bidding strategies, you basically are going to have to keep an eye on it anyway. Otherwise, it'll take so long before you hit profitability that potentially you'll just run out of money before you ever make money up front, if that makes sense. On the flip side, obviously, if you have very successful already and you can afford to lose $3,000 a month or $1,000 a month on ads, and you can wait 12 months before the algorithm figures out how to run your ads through brute trial and error with your ads, well then it can be a win for you because you don't have to do anything. You set up your target cost per conversion, it tries everything it can think of, eventually it figures it out. And so if you can afford to lose that money, like as if you were going to the casino and you got to be able to count on all this money I'm gambling is gone, it's not going to be, I don't need it to pay my rent, then you can go ahead and do that. But everybody else that's on a tighter budget, it's better to start out with a manual setup. And at the very least, if you try this automated setup with automated bidding setup with maximize conversions, maximize conversion value, don't just walk away from it and come back a month later. Check it a few days and just see, is it even looking like Google can guess even halfway quickly that you won't go broke before this works? That kind of thing. So I think I covered that point pretty well. Even designed to do real well up front. It's designed to save time, potentially, but more so it's designed to do better on the back end once they get a lot of data. It's all about the data, the quality of the data as well, but more so the volume of the data that you got. Enough so that basically if you go, for me, myself, and a lot of people out there that are doing PPC that are PPC strategists, they're going to wait until they at least have 1,000 or more, like for me, 10,000 conversions. Conversions being, could be a lead or could be a sale, okay? One of those at least. To have stable results, switching over to these automated bidding strategies to be able to get something halfway stable out of what once you switch over and something positive out of that. So just put that into frame of reference. You'll have, let's say you'll do manual bidding with enhanced CPC. Enhanced CPC uses a little bit of Google's machine learning and all their data as well. So it's like halfway between pure manual bidding and something like maximize conversions. It's just not giving Google complete free rein to say, here's my budget, spend it. I'm not going to add any input. So basically, we'll run campaigns and manual bidding with enhanced CPC bidding. And then once I get to 10,000 conversions on that campaign, given I'm not naturally through all the ways that I optimize, which I won't go through today, changing the bids for mobile versus desktop and male versus female and this age versus that age, I can't lower the cost per conversion anymore, or I can't raise the ROI of the campaign anymore for a while. And I know I'm not going to basically be able to raise the profitability of that campaign anymore just with what I can do as a human with all the possible levers in there. I could switch it over to maximize conversions and more specifically, or even better, maximize conversion value. Then the algorithm can take this whole swath of data of all the 10,000 people they have to look at now and figure out, figure out of those 10,000 people, they find trends like males that are 45 years old and have been to this website convert at like 10,000% versus the average typical person that's been to your website. Therefore, anytime somebody has those 3 particular traits, we're going to show the ad no matter what, basically, even if we have to pay 10 times more for a click. That's the kind of things that their algorithm can figure out that you can't figure out, and where these 2 bidding strategy settings can be of an advantage, great advantage to you. So for some people say they'd switch things over from manual to automated bidding at 1,000 conversions. I'm more so 10,000. You can make up your own mind with that, because I want, when I switch it over, keep in mind when you switch it over, there's going to be some volatility, because any change you make in Google Ads, your results are going to go negative for a little while the algorithm readjusts. The ad serving algorithm that decides if your ad gets shown or a competitor ad gets shown, because if you make a big change like that, it's got to slowly test whatever change you have set up for them to have your ad run, and then see if your new settings will get the best click-through rate from the other people that are there, that they already know how those ads run. So they slowly test out your ads again and if they get positive data, they can run your ads even more heavily after that. But until they know for sure your ad, after the big setting is made, is better, they'll run it very slowly again. So there's always a negative buffering period once you make a big change, like switching the bidding strategy. And so when I switch the bidding strategy, I want to be sure absolutely that I had enough data. I'm not going to want to backtrack. And and with that, I want my results good enough that I can take a little bit of a hit short term as we're switching over the bidding strategy, knowing that the ROI will go down temporarily after we make that switch. And so that's why I go like 10,000 conversions. And obviously that takes longer, but I gave you the reasons why I do it, basically. Okay, so with that's the real opportunity using these 2 bidded strategies. Waiting till you can't optimize the campaign any more than you can using your own mind and all the switches and levers. And there's a ton of different switches and levers that people don't use, which they should use, like adjusting the bids. Like I said, you can adjust your bids on the income demographic, that the person's income level, or their parental status, or their age, or the time of day that they searched. And you can get a lot of results just doing that. But once you can't anymore, there's things that the computer can draw inferences from that you can't, just because the human mind can't look at only so much data and see the correlations between certain data points. Google has 1 million different data points that you may categories that you may fall under, and so each user, they're trying to, out of 1 million data points, to classify that user, and then they have that for each of the 10,000 conversions. You can see how you couldn't possibly wrap that around your head, try to figure out what are these different links between all these different 10,000 people. But realistically, it makes sense that if they had to really draw a conclusion about what your customers are buying they probably would need 10,000 people. 1,000 isn't very much if you're trying to do what I was saying the algorithm is set up to do and is doing. So, respectively, if you have, I'll just leave that one be. I'll move on to the next one here. Maximize conversion value bid strategy setting is much, much better than maximize conversion bid strategy setting for lead campaigns particularly. So, because if you use these, use maximize conversions bid strategy setting with a lead generation campaign, what will happen a lot of times is if somebody types in free and then your whatever product or service you sell that you're generating leads for, it will recognize the cost per conversion was real cheap, and then it'll just right away start dumping all the free traffic on you, which is why this is not set or forget at least for a very, very long time, until the thing has been it's totally kind of figured out what's what. But even then, if you don't make any changes forever, it will keep giving you the free traffic that is probably a complete waste. You can't deal with any of those people. So if you can maximize conversion value, you always want to do that. Now, even if you're doing lead generation, you can use maximize conversion value. Why? Because there's a thing called offline conversion tracking that you can do, which what basically is, if you haven't watched my other videos, when a lead comes in, once that person turns into a sale, you can actually take the little serial number that you can capture along with the user when they come in, give that serial number back to Google, and then it tells you on what keyword they typed in that led to the purchase, time of the day they searched, day of the week they searched, the state they're from, the zip code they're from, so on and so forth. And for manual adjustments, but Google can also use that, so that obviously they're going to make a lot better decisions for you if they know who physically bought. But not only that, the maximized conversion value is actually going to give you the person that spent the most, and not only that, whoever got the highest ROI, who drove the most sales revenue per dollar ad spend, and so at that point they can just keep driving whatever's going to get you more and more profit all the time, versus more and more leads, which the lead quality, very likely the cheapest leads are the crappiest ones, so it'll just get you and pile you on more and more cheaper and crappier leads. And so if you that works basically if the person buys within 90 days. If they don't, you can score the lead at least, and you can switch to maximize conversion value and get Google to optimize based upon what's getting you the highest quality lead. You can score the lead 1 to 10, and basically then they can at least optimize and get you the most leads, whatever is getting you the highest ranked or scored leads, which will get you a much better result than just leads if you're using this. Maximize conversions is not very good in my opinion in general for lead generation without having the actual lead quality data, like whether the lead was qualified at the very least, which you could stick if you could use maximize conversions and at least give Google the data about if the lead was qualified or not, but still much better to give them what the sale revenue or the amount of revenue was, or what you anticipate the lifetime value of the client will be or the customer will be, and use that to optimize and then switch over to maximize conversion value instead. For e-commerce businesses, okay, use maximize conversion value to not get a bunch of small orders. So obviously if you're using maximize conversions for an e-commerce company, what will happen is, just like I told you before, for the lead generating people, is they'll get you as many, because the cheapest sales will be the products that are the least expensive, because it's an auction system on Google. The keywords that are meant for people looking for cheaper items will be cheaper because people aren't willing to spend as much for that traffic because it usually nets less revenue. So the algorithm in that case will just get you a ton of the crappier, well not crappier, we'll just say smaller revenue sales, and then constantly your account's getting optimized to get smaller and smaller purchases. So in that particular case, you always want maximize conversion value for that reason. But not only that, if you are selling something over $100, a lot of times, as you know, people call or they fill out the contact form before they buy. And if you take orders over the phone, like through a credit card virtual terminal, you want that data fed back into your ad account using the offline conversion tracking process. Otherwise, you're going to have a big hole in your data. And then ultimately, a lot of the decisions Google are making are going to be incorrect because it doesn't see the purchases that are made offline through the phone. And if you have, for sure, more than 10% of your purchases are through the phone like that, and you don't just send them back to the website to finish their purchase, you've got to get the offline conversion tracking process going, or getting that sales data back into your account so that basically that the maximize conversion value bid strategy setting you're using isn't going to run crappily. Let's just say, because going back, quality of data is everything. There's a lot of people who make the biggest purchases are going to call in first. They're too scared to put a $10,000 purchase through the website, particularly before calling, and therefore those people are more likely to be the ones that go through the phone to order, right? And then so therefore the keywords that drive the biggest purchases will be ignored by Google because they don't know that the purchases that you did have came through at all, if you followed me through all that. So therefore, offline conversion tracking is very important. And along with that, take my advice and start setting it up now. If you're doing lead generation, start offline conversion tracking now. If you're doing e-commerce sales with products over $100 and you do taking the order over the phone over 10% of the time, do offline conversion tracking now. Why? Because it takes a good year, we'll just say, of running your ads to have built up a decent amount of purchases and revenue for Google to make decisions. So if you run your ads for a while and then later on you say, okay, I'm going to do this offline conversion tracking, you wasted about half the value of all the ad spend you had for the first year. Half the value of what you're paying for is the data that you're getting, because the data tells you what's going to be able to rake you in millions of dollars later on. And by canceling out the 50% of the account, that if it wasn't there and you weren't wasting your money on it, it would already be very profitable for you already. So it's not, people don't do offline conversion tracking because it's not that simple to do. It is simple, but the first time you do it, it's a little bit hard to wrap your head around. But you want to get the full value of what you're paying, you're spending your money on Google for, which is what doesn't work and what works extremely well, so that you can have this ironclad thing that just spits out profit all day long once you just have enough data that tells you exactly how to set the ad account up. So anyway, my rant's done with that one. Now, you still need to negative keywords despite what people say with these bid strategy types. Won't name names here, but respectively, for all the reasons I said before, that your account can, despite what it's supposed to do with these two bid strategy types and Google just getting you customers without having to do much, the algorithm is going to try to weed out keywords that don't result in good results. But like with the example I gave you before, where somebody's looking for free, then your product name after it, Google can't decipher that free, that's bad. So you have to guide it, or you should guide it with negative keywords somewhat, so that you don't bleed money forever, or at least for quite a while, whereas you could just tell Google up front that anybody that's typing free or cheap or whatever, you just don't want up front. And respectively, there's certain things, like if it's really bad if you don't use negative keywords with lead generation campaigns. It's really bad because people will come in, waste your people's time for things that you can't deliver on or don't do. And the negative keywords, if you were looking at the search terms report and adding negative keywords, you could stop that way early on, respectively, instead of waiting for the Google to get 1 or 2 years down the line, even really enough data to know that people that typed in this type of keyword, they would call, but they would not end up converting or whatever. So, because ultimately, takes a lot of time to get revenue data for them to make strong decisions, but also as they get to your web page and they call, they're not going to bounce back. And Google uses the bounce rate of the page to kind of know before they get enough revenue data to look at what might work and what doesn't. And obviously, if they call and they want something that you don't deliver, but nor does really anybody deliver, and so they're just calling everybody, and regularly this happens to where they call you as well. Google for a long, long time will think that basically they're doing a good job sending you this person that didn't bounce, or therefore got to your website, called, didn't go back to Google at least for a while, whereas you could have known right away just by looking at the search terms report that you don't offer this, so you should have added that particular word or phrases with that word in it should be added as negative keywords. Got that done up front. Respectively, right away when you launch a campaign, you should be looking at your search terms report every day and adding negative keywords. And then at least after the first month, once a month, you got to do it. Those negative keywords are gold. Your millions of dollars in profit every year from your campaign several years down the road relies on enough data to know what works and what didn't work, and a really fat negative keyword list that makes sure that basically every single thing that search to click on your ad with is basically 100% what you do, has good, looks like they have good intent. They're not cheap. They're not tire kickers, so on and so forth. And that gets done through the negative keywords mostly. Respectively, negative keywords and the data about in the Google's machine learning process, that both of them together work together. You also have to check your tracking at least every 30 days to not damage your momentum. So as you get going, the biggest problem or thing that I see people do is they'll try to use these bid strategy settings, maximize conversions, maximize conversion value, and their tracking is not set up right from the beginning, so it was failed from the get-go because people have trouble tracking and they don't, I guess, know the value and therefore don't want to spend big bucks to get the tracking set up right, which I do that for people all the time. So if you need help, contact our firm, by the way. But even if they do, very few people have their tracking set up perfectly. Like 10% of the accounts I look at have their tracking really set up right to where every single lead and every single conversion is tracked, or every single sale is tracked. Even if you have it set up perfectly, things break. You have web developers that come in that are supposed to do one thing to your site and end up breaking the tracking, and then the tracking's broke for 90 days. Then you finally figure it out, you fixed it. That's 90 days you don't have data. Half the value of the spend for the 90 days, you don't got it. But not only that, you're going to confuse the crap out of Google's algorithm. All of a sudden, it thought it knew what was going on and how to handle your ads, and then everything it learned and thought it knew is like gone. And then it starts to compensate, and then it is going to screw up all the things, all the settings that it had for your account that got it to work in the first place are going to be completely derailed. There is a way, by the way, if that happens to you like that, you can contact Google, and there's a way through the support, you can ask them, or just try to Google and find it, where if your tracking breaks like that, you can notify Google, and then they'll be able to basically exclude that period of time in their decision on how to actually run that particular campaign, if that makes sense. Because they know people's tracking breaks. The best thing to do is just check it every month. So, if it breaks, it's not screwed up for very long. You can recover from it, break it for 2 weeks. Even then though, if you really want the best results, if it was broken for 2 weeks, still contact Google for that. It's worth it. It doesn't take that much to really screw up a campaign like that. Having your tracking broken for 3 weeks will really muddy the waters for them, and learning how to give you what you're there to get in the first place, which is sales at a certain cost. But that leads me into the last thing, which is I wanted to talk about the optimization process. When you do have one of these bid strategy settings set up on your campaigns, how to manage it. There is a misconception that even when you have tracking set up on Google Ads, that if the tracking says that you made $3,000 in sales, that's exactly how much you should have in your bank account, in other words. That's not correct, because there's certain people who don't have cookies on their browser, that they delete them, they switch devices, they wait to purchase, and they tell their brother to make the purchase. You're not going to capture every sale. You're going to capture enough to make really good optimizations on your account, but it's not going to one-to-one, the actual revenue to what shows up in your account, no matter how well you set it up. So what you want to do once you have all these campaigns going for you is you want to figure out the true ratio of sales to tracking. In other words, try to figure out if you spend $3,000 a month in Google Ads and it says you basically sold $8,000 and you got $8,000 in sales from it. Inside your account says conversion value $8,000. How much really came through to your bank account? Was it 15? So in other words, or just say 16. So in other words, what Google says that I got in terms of purchases according to their conversion tracking and to the limits it can track, it's actually understating what our sales are by half, which is a common thing, by the way. All the time, that's like an average. Google, you're only going to capture a third to like 2/3, somewhere in there, generally speaking, of all the real revenue that comes through for a plethora of different reasons. A lot of it is most of the people that go to your website aren't going to buy today. They're going to buy it at some point in the future, upwards of 6-12 months in the future. And all those purchases also won't be trackable. So anyway, if you get a feel of that already, now you can say, okay, what I'm really making is $15,000 when I spend $3,000. That ROI is good, but it's not good enough. That's a 5-to-1 return. I need an 8-to-1 return. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just divide 8 by 5 and figure out from there how much I need to basically lower my my target for maximized conversions on that campaign for the target CPA or whatever. Or if you're using maximized conversion value, then you would want to know how much to raise your ROAS target, because the higher you raise the ROAS target, the more conservative the campaign's going to run. A lot of people don't know that. It's not just about getting you conversions at a certain cost. In the marketplace, the higher you bid within Google Ads, the higher you bid, the more aggressively your ads will run. If you bid less, you'll get less clicks. That's the way that it's always been. So you can imagine that the target CPA or the target ROAS setting on your campaigns like a lever. The higher it is, let's just say, to keep it simple, the target ROAS setting, the higher it is, the less clicks you'll get. But there'll be cheaper clicks, and therefore it'll raise how much your ROI is, and then it'll get you to the higher target ROAS setting that you want. You'll get less overall sales, but they'll be at a higher ROI. So with that, you divide 8 by 5, you realize that in order to reach an 8-to-1 return, you need to change your target ROAS setting for this, and you'll do it on a campaign by campaign basis. Realistically, well, to keep it simple for now, you could if all your campaigns have target ROAS already, which a lot of times I'm only going to have one campaign in target ROAS. Why? Because one campaign has 10,000 conversions and I've been able to switch it over, and other ones not yet. But assuming all of your campaigns were on target ROAS, or should I say that was the old way to describe it, maximize conversion value strategy or bid strategy, basically I'm going to raise the target ROAS setting on each campaign by 8 divided by 5, I don't know what that is, like 30%. So I'm going to raise the target ROAS setting on each campaign 30%, so that ultimately at the end of the day, if I check my bank account 90 days from now, because you got to give things time to work. Most of the people that click on the first day aren't going to buy. You got to give time to people to come back, and so on and so forth. That this time, when I check and see how much sales I got for my 3,000, in reality, I got 24,000 in sales, not 15,000 this time. So you can see how just changing the target ROAS setting can get you to your target ROI that you want. On the flip side, if you're needing an 8-to-1 return and you realize you got an 11-to-1 return, you can lower the target ROAS setting on each campaign by like 30%, and now you can get another, basically 70% more sales and 70% more actual volume out of Google Ads, because you've told Google that you want to run your ads a little bit higher in the ad list. One on the ads 1 through 4 on Google, instead of being at 4 most of the time, you're now averaging being at number 2. You get a lot more volume, yes, a little bit less margin, but generally speaking, in a lot of situations like that, you'll have to do the math. There's some calculators out there that can help you do it, but for most of the time, if you can get a 70% increase in revenue for a 30% reduction in your ROI or your margin on what it takes, how much money it takes to get a sale, you'll end up with more profit. So you'll have to run the math and see if it's worth it for you to run the ads more aggressively. If you're over, you're beyond a, margin in terms of what you need to be selling, your profit margin of what you need to be selling already, to try to go even more aggressively by putting the target ROAS to where it is actually lower, so that you'll get more clicks from each campaign. So with that said, these tools are best used like a lever to get you more or less sales out of your account at any given time. If you want more sales, it's going amazingly well, you take your target ROAS setting and you lower it. If you aren't getting what you want yet, you can raise that target ROAS setting by and get a higher ROI, higher profit margin from each sale than what you had before. And this is where knowing your numbers come in. Going way back to the beginning of as I was, when I was talking about all this, you try to figure out what your sales need to be starting out. You set up all your tracking, and then periodically you're going to check your bank account and see how that coincides with your actual tracking. And from there, you're just making hair adjustments on your target ROAS setting or your target CPA setting under maximize conversions if you're using that bid strategy, until you get the sweet spot of the maximum sales at the most optimized level of profit margin to get you the most profit overall. Realistically, I mentioned you should raise or lower your bidding target ROAS setting or target CPA setting 15% at a time, either up or down. In my past example there, I said basically to get the most overall profit out of your campaigns, it made sense to raise the target ROAS setting, lower it by 30%. Well, I don't recommend lowering your target ROAS setting by 30%, not all at once at least. 15% is about the most I will change the target ROAS setting at a given time. So instead of doing it 30% all at once, I'll do 15%. I'll let things kind of stabilize in terms of how I see the click volume. I want to see the click volume stabilize to a certain point, and kind of the amount of conversions that are coming through stabilize, and then I'll do the other 15%. Why? Because, like I said before, the algorithm hates change. When you make a big change, the algorithm doesn't know how to handle things, and you get a lot of volatility, and you also get a little bit of negative traction in the amount of profit you're going to make with any change that you do. The algorithm handles it better if you're going to make smaller adjustments. And so instead of your sales going up and down like this, it'll be a more smooth path up to your goal in general. And it'll take a little longer, but at least if you're relying on a certain amount of sales to come in per day, to get another 50% of sales, you can't take a negative 50% amount of sales for 7 to 14 to 30 days while your new settings stabilize. That you don't have that basically. So respectively, as a side, budget increases is the same thing. If your campaigns are saying limited by budget, you lower the target ROAS setting to get more clicks, and then all of a sudden your campaign says limited by budget, which means the campaigns are only running your ads half of the day or it's shutting off midday someplace. Then if you're going to raise the budget, I only recommend raising it 15% at a time, because it'll be very volatile. Your results won't be what you think they are short term. Your spend will go up, but your ROI will go way down as it panics and tries to hurry up and spend, because still that Google wants to make money, so they're going to try to do whatever they can to get you say spend this, we're going to spend this, but it'll be a smoother path up if you just do a 15% increase on the daily budget there than more than that basically. So just as another small tip, as you are going to fine tune your target ROAS adjustment to get more sales, and you got two levers there. You got the daily budget, and then of course you got the target ROAS setting itself. You can play with those two and basically try to get to the point where you're walking up to where you're making the maximum profit from your campaigns. And what you have one day, you can come back 90 days from now, every 90 days basically. The campaign will have more data. It'll be more efficient because of that. And you may find then, of course, you can raise the budget again another 15%, or you may basically lower the target ROAS setting even more to kind of push the ads a little bit harder or thereof. So I use the target ROAS setting more like a lever than as an actual way to dial in a certain amount of sales, because I'll use my bank account and I'll try to figure out the bank account and how that's behaving as a true indication of what the campaigns are doing, more so than the tracking, given the tracking it undercounts to some degree, as I said. So anyway, long story short, that's everything about the main things to know about maximize conversions, maximize conversion value, bid strategy setting, for you to be able to get the most out of it, milk it for what it's worth, if you will, stuff to avoid. If you like this video, I have a ton of other videos on this channel about other PPC money-making strategies. If you want to be a sleuth at PPC, you should definitely check some of my other videos out. You'll make quite a bit of money implementing this stuff on your own campaigns. I have a blog at guaranteeppc.com/blog with step-by-step instructions on how to build PPC campaigns the way that I build them to guarantee our results to our clients. If you want to see how to build campaigns in a more step-by-step fashion, you can find information that I've personally put together there as well. If you have any questions about this, how to use either one of these bid strategy settings, these automated bid strategy settings, leave me a comment down below. I get back to every single person who leaves me a comment on this channel, typically within a day or two. With that said, I hope you enjoyed this video, learned a lot, and I hope to see you on my next video in another couple days with another great strategy on it, about another great topic that can make you a lot of money as well.